The high-ranking representative of the Russian Defense Ministry visited a number of states in Africa. With which countries it is negotiating, on what issues and in what ways Russian security forces and not only structures could be of mutual benefit to African states. Russian Deputy Defense Minister Yunus-Bek visited Niger for the first time on December 4, where he met with the country's Defense Minister General Salifou Modi. The National Council for the Salvation of the Homeland, the country's military government that came to power after the overthrow of President Mohamed Bazoum in July, announced the meeting, without specifying an agenda. This is the second meeting between Evkariv and Modi. The first took place on September 16 in neighboring Mali during Evkarov's previous trip to Africa. Before Niger, Evkariv traveled to Mali and Burkina Faso, according to Malian state television ORTN. According to Africa Intel, in Mali Evkariv discussed with the local leadership not only military technical cooperation, but also cooperation in the development of the railroad network, energy and coal mining. In September, Evkariv traveled for the first time along the Libya-Mali-Burkina Faso-Niger route. At that time, his tour was perceived exclusively in the context of Russia's military technical cooperation with the new democracies of the Sahel countries. Some of their leaders visited Moscow and St. Petersburg as part of the Russia-Africa Council, where they negotiated assistance in fighting jihadists and regional separatists. The range of issues that Evkariv is now discussing with the leadership of the Sahel countries includes not only military technical aspects, but also projects on the development of infrastructure, railroad transportation, mining industry, development of green energy and some others. At least that's what the highly interested and certainly biased French press, Le Monde in particular, is reporting. Perhaps, in time, such purely economic and partly political aspects of cooperation between Russia and the Sahel countries will gradually pass from Evkariv to more specialized Russian structures. The fact is that, for example, Russian embassies simply did not physically exist in a number of countries, and other forms of cooperation with Russia were blocked by the French with their schemes of corrupt control of national elites in francophone African countries. By the end of this year, Russian embassies in Burkina Faso and Equatorial Guinea will be opened from scratch. In particular, Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova said this a few months ago. Evkariv, however, is now the man who speaks the same language with the new military leaders of the Sahel countries. Not in the French sense, but in the emotional sense. Military and technical assistance to the Sahel countries is now a priority for the new leadership in Mali and Niger, as the fighting in these countries does not stop for a day. It is important today, and this issue is in the competence of General Evkariv directly. Another deputy head of the Defense Ministry, Alexander Fomin, has recently said that it is the Defense Ministry that is actively working to establish contacts with African countries. As a rule, he said, agreements are made in the field of military cooperation, and this agreement lives more than one. It has in parallel a number of other agreements at the state or interagency level, through which the format of interaction in this or that direction is detailed. To date, we have agreements with 30 states, with 6 more to come. The total would be 36 states. This practically covers most of the African continent. Mali's army last week managed to finally recapture the town of Kidal, one of the strongholds of opponents of the country's central government, from Tuareg rebels. Russian volunteers who have remained in Mali since the days of private military companies also took part in the fighting for Kidal. The Mali army managed to lure a prominent Tuareg leader to its side. But at the same time, the jihadists were able to inflict a nasty gentle defeat on Mali's forces in the Sahel through a classic raid. It is premature to speak of a turning point in the fight against jihadism in Mali. On his first tour, Evkariv was accompanied by General Andrei Avryanov, head of the 161st Training Center of the GRU, a man famous in certain circles. His biography is secret, but we can say that he speaks fluent Serbian, is fond of collecting edged weapons and translated into Russian from Serbian review catalogs of ancient daggers of Montenegro and Albania. He is a participant in the wars in Afghanistan and Chechnya. He has 3 Orders of Courage, the title of Hero of Russia for Crimea in 2014. Detractors are circulating the only photo of Avryanov in a tuxedo and with a bow tie, from his daughter's wedding, where the notorious Petrov and Bashirov were seen as guests. At the recent Russia-Africa summit, General Avryanov was an official participant in talks with delegations from the Sahel countries. And in civilian status, he is a SWAT officer and an expert in training and educating SWAT fighters. Also recently in the foreign press began to appear reports about the alleged beginning of the formation of Russia's so-called African Corps, a certain PMC, designed primarily for action in Libya. Newsweek mentions Evkarov's last visit to Africa in this context. The Russian Defense Ministry has not made any official comments on the matter. Perhaps, in the current political realities, the creation of such a paramilitary structure that would deal exclusively with African affairs and represent Russia's interests in Africa might actually make sense. For African issues are extremely broad and specific, including in terms of security issues. Moreover, it also varies greatly regionally. There cannot be a single approach to, say, Mozambique, the Central African Republic or the Sahel as a whole. In any case, Evkerov's mission has acquired mythology in the Western and especially French-speaking press precisely because of his status as a deputy of the Russian Defense Ministry. But Lamand is partly right in that the range of issues being discussed in the Sahel has already gone beyond just military technical cooperation. At the end of March 2022, Mali received 2 Mi-35P attack helicopters, radar equipment, weapons and ammunition from Russia after the French military began its withdrawal. And in early August 2022, L-39 combat trainer jets, Su-25 attack aircraft, Mi-24P attack helicopters and Mi-8 military transport helicopters. They require trained crews. The number of cadets from the Sahel countries in Russian military educational institutions has multiplied over the past year. But that's a cadre for the future. Someone has to fight the war right now. Following Yevkerov's September meetings with the Modi, Mali's interim military president Assimi Goïta and Burkina Faso's leader Ibrahim Traoré, the three countries announced the formation of a military alliance, the Alliance of Sahel States. The goal of the alliance is declared to be the creation of a collective defense architecture, and this is already a military political alliance, which the Western press has managed to dub African NATO. At the same time, the Sahel countries announced their collective withdrawal from all other military, political and economic alliances previously established in West Africa under the auspices of the United States and France. In other words, in just a few months, the political configuration of the entire region changed, a new interstate bloc was created, united by common goals and even a new common ideology. And it is not only security issues that need to be cooperated with such an entity. As the current problems are resolved, purely political, economic and even ideological issues will come to the fore. The foreign press explicitly writes that Russian diplomacy is in a more advantageous position in the Sahel states compared to France. Thus, Evkerov's mission looks like only the beginning of a long process of building a new stage of relations between Russia and Africa, promising and mutually beneficial.